So we are finally moving into graphs. Our first two graphs that we're going to talk about, because they are so similar, are histograms and dot plots. So there are many types of graphs that statistics use to represent or show data. Each graph is good at showing different characteristics of the data, such as the mean, median, mode, or range, also known as the spread and the distribution. Now, while I'm creating my dot plots and histograms, I want you to think to yourself, which of these measures of center or spread can you easily see as I construct my graphs? So dot plots. Dot plots show the spread or the range of data on a number line. A X is placed over each value in a data set to represent that value. So I'm going to put an X over 0 because there's one of them, an X over 1 because there's one of them, an X over 2 because there is one of them, 2 X's over 3, 3 X's over 4 because there are 3 4s, and 1 X over 5. You'll notice that I ticked off each one as I graphed it on my graph. So you might have already gotten the hint that the mode and the range are the easiest things to see when it comes to a dot plot. The mode I can easily see is 4 because 4 occurs the most. I can see that because it's the highest bar as well as there's 3 X's. The range, like we've learned, is just the highest value minus the lowest value. So 5 take away 0 gives me 5. Now we're going to go over to histograms. Histograms are just like dot plots, but it's as if we've taken bars and we've drawn bars around all of them. So a histogram is a type of bar graph, but it's also subtly different, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. A histogram shows the frequency of data in specific intervals. An interval is 2 numbers that are side by side. It's the space in between. An interval is the space in between 0 and 2. The second interval is 2 and 4, and the third interval is 4 and 6. So we're going to put all of the numbers that fall in the interval in the correct category. So whenever you're trying to figure out which numbers to put in here, you're always going to go from the lowest number to the highest number. So let me show you what I mean by that. Between 0 and 2, there's a 0, and then there's 1. The 2 is not going to go in this interval, it'll go in the next interval. That's the tricky part. You always want to only put numbers that go from 0 to technically 1.9. So 0 and 1 fall in between that interval. 2 is going to go in the next interval. So I'm going to take, I'm going to go up to the y-axis, and I'm going to go up to the number 2 because there's 2 numbers in there, and I'm going to draw a bar graph around it. You don't need to write the numbers in there, I just wanted to show you where they go. So in between 2 and 4, or technically 2 to 3.9, I'm going to put the number 2, 3, and 3. That's 3 numbers total, 2, 3, and 3. So that means I'm going to go up to my y-axis, I'm going to find 3, and that is how high my graph is going to go because of there being 3 numbers. The last interval is 4 to 6, but technically 4 to 5.9. In that interval, I'm going to put 4, 4, 4, and 5. Numbers, so I'm going to go up to the number 4. That's how tall this bar is going to be. I will draw my bar. So the mode, hopefully you have figured out at this point in time, is between 4 and 6. We can look back at the data and recognize that that number is 4. It's a little bit harder to see the mode because the mode could be 4 or 5. And in this bar graph or in this histogram, you can't tell if it's 4 or 5, but we'd have to go back to the data to determine that the mode is 4. The range, just like before, is the smallest and largest number subtracted from each other, and again, that's not super easy to see in the histogram because 1 could be our lowest number or 0 could be our lowest number, and 5 could be our highest or 4 could be our highest. But we know looking back at the data that it's 0 and 5, so we subtract them to find the range. So in summary, what are dot plots and histograms good at showing about data? Well, dot plots and histograms are good at showing the mode and range, otherwise known as distribution of data. This is called the spread. There's a lot of words here that mean the same thing. Range, distribution, and spread all mean the same thing. And this is because both graphs show how many times a number appears, as well as the highest and lowest value, which we can see at the left and the right side of the graph, like we saw up here.